Okay. Good evening. I'm Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Goodine, pastor of Church on Wheels Spoken Word out of Deltona, Florida. And I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight in Bible study. Like us on YouTube at Pastor Jeffrey Goodine. Subscribe and hit the bell to be notified. It's where you get so many subscriptions. They say something happens, they send you a plaque or something. I don't know. But subscribe and hit the bell to be notified, and you will know whenever there's a new video that comes out. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on our Facebook group page at Church on Wheels, Let the Good News Roll. Facebook Live, I'm Jeffrey Goodine. Twitter, which is now X, at Goodine Jeffrey. Instagram, Goodine Jeffrey. And Clubhouse, Church on Wheels Ministry. Tonight we are continuing in our the power of God's name. Tonight we are going to do Jehovah Rapha. Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. Now, all of us need some healing at some point in our lives. When people in the hospitals, the nursing homes, or however it is, Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. And he's a healing God. Now, he heals, but there's something you got to understand about him healing. There are some people that say, well, this person here has been has had this ailment all their lives. And we've been praying for him, and nothing seems to happen. Nothing seems to happen. Well, he may be healing in another manner. See, we think the healing has to do with our physical thing, but a lot of times our healing has to be emotional. Sometimes it's emotional healing that we need. So when people say, well, he's been this way, or she's been this way, or this person's been this way, and we've been praying for them, and nothing happened, and they're still the way that they are. That's how God operates. It's beyond our control, beyond our comprehension. He may be not healing them physically, but he's healing them spiritually. He's healing them in his soul. They're okay with it. Sometimes the ones that are not sick are probably the ones that really cause most things, because they're more worried about than themselves. Sometimes we're more worried about something beyond our control. But he is Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. Now, tonight, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse. Send me an email, pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. That's pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. I will add you to the list, and you will get a copy of the handout. And with the handout, you can follow along with us. So you can tune in, invite a friend, have a watch party. So send me an email, pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. I'll add you to the list, and you will get a copy of the handout so that you can follow along with us in Bible study. Tonight, Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. Now, the foundation of this is in Exodus chapter 15. Now, a couple weeks back, we did on one of the powers of the name, and what we did, and I'm trying to remember the name, Jehovah Nissi, where that was in Exodus chapter 17. But today we're going to do Exodus chapter 15, the Lord who heals, and this scripture in here about him healing. So Exodus chapter 15, and there are a couple things that are going on in here In the midst of our struggles, hurts, bitterness, and pain, God has a way to sweeten the waters and heal our bodies, souls, and spirits. He uses the pain and suffering to make us stronger. He is Jehovah Rapha. Now, Jehovah Rapha, I mean, you know, you could have, he's a healer. I mean, he's a healer. I mean, we have countless stories of the doctor gave one diagnosis and then prayer, and then the doctor could not explain. He just said he don't see it anymore, or he's healing. As I said before, you know, while everybody's crying, God is healing. So he is Jehovah Rapha, and he heals. Now, in the story tonight, and when you read Exodus chapter 15, you'll see the beginning of God doing what he does. In Exodus chapter 15, they sang, this is starting at verse number 1. This is called the Song of Moses, or the Song of Deliverance. They had just realized that they left out of Egypt and they get to the Red Sea. Now, I want you to understand here, water, they couldn't cross the Red Sea. So they got Pharaoh and his army coming. They cannot cross. So God showed them something. God showed his power. He told Moses what to do. Moses lifted his rod, the same staff that he used in Exodus chapter 17. He raises the staff, and the waters parted, and they came over on dry land. And when they got over on dry land, Pharaoh and his army chased after them, and then the waters closed on them. And they got to see that. They got to see that. And they got to see the power of God. See, we get to see the power of God. Sometimes we just don't pay any attention to it, or we don't look at it but that is the power of God. So here in chapter 15, they just saw that. They're over on the other side. They saw the power of God. They saw it. Because again, they had no weapons. They had nothing. Pharaoh's coming, and there's the Red Sea in front of them. And they were kind of like what we would say between a rock and a hard place. They didn't know what to do. But God told Moses what to do. Moses listened. And that is the beginning of him healing. Now watch what he did. The Song of Moses, when you look at Exodus chapter 15, the first 1 to 3, this is the Song of Moses, or the Song of Deliverance. They are now rejoicing. And when you read from verses 1 to verse 22, all of that is saying a song. They're all looking at what God has done for them. Verse number 1, he says, then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake, saying. Now they're singing and rejoicing to God for what they saw, for him saving them. It says, I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. Now they're talking about, they saw Pharaoh army and everything got thrown into the sea. Now, as we read on in verse 4, it says, Pharaoh's chariots and his host has he cast into the sea. His chosen captives also drowned in the Red Sea. So they're singing this. This is the song of Moses. This is a song of deliverance. They are celebrating what they just saw. And you know, we celebrate what God does for us when we find ourselves in between a rock and a hard place. And then when we say, God, why you brought why this far? Because they were brought, God, why you bring us this far only to have us get, drowned in the water? Well, you brought us this far, but now you're going to have Pharaoh and his army overtake us. You brought us out here into the wilderness, in here to the sea to kill us. And all kind of stuff. But then they saw the power of God. And so in Exodus 15, the beginning, you'll see them sing a song. They're singing a song of deliverance. It's called a song of deliverance. And in verse 9, it says, the enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My lust shall be satisfied. Upon them I will draw my sword, and my hand shall destroy them. The enemy, they're saying this is what the enemy says. And we say that when we find ourselves today between a rock and a hard place, we figure the enemy's going to overtake us. But then they see what happened. Verse 12 says, thou stretches out thy right hand, the earth swallowed them. And they're talking about what he did. How many of us can really sing the praises of what he has done for us in our lives? Now, I can't sing. They say that, I don't sing. I sing, but I don't sing well. They say I can't carry a tune in a bucket across the street.
It's a hole in the bucket.
Yeah, it's a hole in the bucket. What is it about God and what he does that cause you to celebrate? Now, you know what he did for you. And so you will see them celebrating. Now let's get to verse 22. Here, verse 22 says, so Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Now, think of it now. You know what's getting ready to happen. Now, you celebrating is what God did for you. And now you in the wilderness again. Here they're in the wilderness. We're in the wilderness of Shur. They're in the wilderness now. And they went 3 days with no water. Now, let's look at the wilderness. The wilderness is not an exciting place to be, but it is the only way to get to where God is leading. We all have to go through the wilderness in order to get somewhere. He's taking us through all of this. Now, here, the people, 3 days, no water. 3 days. Now, look now, they just saw, say 3 days earlier, they saw the power of God at the Red Sea. Now, they traveled 3 days in the wilderness, found no water. See, when we go after our celebration of one thing, God's leading us somewhere. See, in our lives, when God's leading you somewhere, he's going to lead you in the wilderness. You got to go through the wilderness. Now, that's not a happy place to be, but you got to go through that to get to where God is leading. See, if you take your path, you'll probably never get out the wilderness. But if you take God's path, oh yes, you're going to go through the wilderness. But he's got a plan. You have to, in order to get from here to there, in order to get to where God is leading you, you're going to have to go through the wilderness. And here's what the people did when they went through the wilderness. In the wilderness, they went 3 days with no water. 3 days with no water. Now you know, 3 days with no water. And I put here, God has a purpose for the pain. It's a test. Now think about it. They just saw the power of God 3 days ago. Right before their eyes. And now 3 days in the wilderness, they didn't have no water. They couldn't find water. God is leading them somewhere. God is testing you. See, God tests you. Remember that in the Bible, it said that Jesus told the disciples that Satan wishes to sift you like wheat. But he said, then what Jesus said, I hope your faith don't fail. Not your body or your falling and under Satan's commands and things and getting hit by the fiery darts. He said, I hope your faith don't fail. Surely you as a human is going to fail. We all fail. We all fall short of the glory. But make sure that your faith don't fail. And what happens here is in the test. In the test, they failed. In the test. Now, I want to talk to you about the test. And I put here, you could be in God's will and not have a job. You could be in God's will and not have perfect health. You could be in God's will and suffer all of the calamities of life. Then you say, and you're in the wilderness, and you 3 days with no water, and I'm just using that as a reference. They're in God's will. God saved them. So they're in God's will. But because you're in God's will, that don't mean that you aren't going to suffer the calamities of life. It doesn't mean that. He said that Satan's wishing to sift you like wheat. So if Satan is going to sift you like wheat, he's saying, I hope, Jesus said, I hope your faith don't fail. Now there's a difference. There's a difference in the test. That when he's going to sift you, you're going to be 3 days in the wilderness with no water. 3 days with no water. You're in the wilderness. And Satan wishes to sift you like wheat. And Jesus said he hopes your faith don't fail. That means he already knows your physical body is going to fail. Your mind is going to fail. But not your faith. You don't want your faith. He wants you to continue to have faith. Continue to have faith. No matter what all of the calamities of life, continue to have faith. And I put here, God uses the wilderness to reveal something new about himself, which develops our character and strengthens our faith in the test. You know, every time we come into a hard situation in our lives, he comes through when we call on him. So that meant that when you look back over your life, you can see all of the different things that he has done for you. He's done for us. And that revealing something about you. So right now you ought to be holding on to your faith regardless of how the circumstances look. And yes, the circumstances do look dire. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Here they 3 days with no water. And then and when they came to Mara, they could not drink the water of Mara, for they were bitter. So now, you're in the wilderness, and you look at a solution, but that's not the solution. They got to Mara, they found water, but they couldn't drink the water. See, when God put us through something, yes, we begin to see a solution, but that's not it. That solution is not there. They got to Mara and they could not drink the water. They found the water, but they couldn't drink it. So again, he's testing them. He's testing them. They got to Mara and they found water, but they couldn't drink it. And so the people murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? Now, again, the just left and saw the power of God, and now they're murmuring again. Think about it. When we have a struggle and we call on God and he answers us, it ain't long before we get another test and we fail. They failed. They called on him at the Red Sea and saw what he did. They rejoiced with singing. And then they get into the wilderness. They go to the wilderness of Shur. And they traveled 3 days and found no water. Here's the test. Here's the test. 3 days, no water. And then when they get to Mara, they find water, but they can't drink it. The water's bitter. So now, what do we do? What do we do when we rejoice with what God has done for us, and then a few days later, we in another test, and this test, we see a solution, we think it's a solution, and it's not. It's bitter. We can't use that solution. So now what? And we back to what? Lord, why me? Why does this have to happen now? You know, God, where are you? And then the enemy comes and says, well, where's your God now? If he's a loving God, why would he allow you to do this? If you believe in him, if you're one of his followers, why is he allowing you to do this? Why is he allowing you to go through this? I don't know why he allows it. You have to ask him. But we all know that it works for the good. Now put here, he uses it to reveal something new about him. That means that here they're getting ready to see something new about God, about what he can do. Every time he saves us from something, every time he heals us, it's something new that we say. And here we say walking through the test is much easier when we understand that God has a purpose for our problem. See, they didn't know that God had a purpose for the problem. See, that's a purpose for our problem. Reveal something about us that we hold on to the faith. Now, again, Satan wishes to sift you like wheat. Jesus said, I hope your faith don't fail. So that means that the calamities of life that this world is going to bring to you, hope your faith don't fail. Your faith in God and Jesus don't fail. Because you're going to find yourself in the wilderness 3 days with no water. And then when you get there and you find water, you can't drink it. So in our lives, water here is a metaphor that we use. But we were rejoicing about what he did. And then now we find ourselves in the wilderness with no water. We got problems. And then We see a solution. We think it's a solution, but we can't use the solution because it's bitter. We can't use that water because it's bitter. So 3 days, and then they find water and they can't drink it. We're in we rejoicing. Then we travel a little further, and God want to take us from here to there. And with God leading us from here to there, He takes us through the wilderness as a test. Why? Because you just saw what He did. They just saw what He did by parting the Red Sea, and Pharaoh's army, they came over on dry land. They got to see that. That's what they were rejoicing for. That's what they were singing the songs for. And then God had to move them to somewhere. But to move them to somewhere, they had to go through the wilderness. And that was a test. How many of us can pass the test? Tell you now, we fail. We can't pass the test. We can't pass it. I'm telling you now, we can't pass it. Because the reason why we can't pass the test is because what do we say? Lord, why me? Why now? Why this had to happen now? Talking like that, those phrases mean our faith failed. We failed. Knowing what He has done for us, and we failed. We failed. So now, walking through the test, we got to understand that God has a purpose for our problem. There's a purpose for that. But we don't see it that way. See, it was a purpose for them to be in the wilderness 3 days with no water. And then when they get to Marah, they find water, but you can't drink it. They find water, but you can't drink it. So I put here, God allows seemingly hopeless situations in our lives in order to direct our focus to Him and reveal the true nature of our faith. Now, the true nature of our faith. We fall short. We fall short. And the reason why we fall short is because we use statements like, why me? Why now? Lord, why did this have to happen now? And then when we're in the situation, then we think we can see our way out of it. Then we think that's the solution, and that's not the solution. That water is bitter. So we get to the solution, we think it's the solution, and it's not it. They come to Marah, and it's not it. Then He reveals that He is more powerful than any situation you face. We should already know that. See, when we're being tested, we should already know that He's bigger than any problems we face. Why? It's because when we look back over our lives, all of the problems and things that we can remember that we bring up, we notice that those problems seem like hopeless situations at the time. And when we surrender to Him, we came through. He healed us. He healed our soul. See, a lot of times our physical body is all right. We still in God's will, but the situation seems hopeless. I don't have perfect health. I don't have a job. Bills are piling up. I don't have a job. Some other calamity of life that come along now. And our faith fails. it is not our physical, but our emotional and our spiritual fails. Because again, you could be in perfect health, per se, as you would say, and you still suffer calamities of life. You still suffer the calamities of life. You could have, I guess, money, whatever you want to call it, because you still will suffer calamities of life. And it's that emotional healing that you have to go through. And here's the emotional healing. When we look at 2 Corinthians, and 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 to 10, you'll see what I'm talking about. It says, "For we would not, brethren, have you ignorant of our troubles which came to us in Asia, that we were pressed out of measure, above strength, insomuch that we despise even of life. But we had the sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God which raises the dead, who delivered us from so great a death, and doeth deliver, in whom we trust, that he will yet deliver us." Now here, Paul is saying to the Corinthians, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Boy, we went through it in Asia. So much so till we wanted to die. Just get it over with. That they even despised life. Like, why am I still living and going through this? Why am I still living? God, take me now. Why am I going through this calamity in my life? Why am I going through this sickness? Why am I going through this? Why am I going through that? All the way. And he said that even we despised our life in ourselves because we were having it so bad, we wanted to die. Now, we know that there are certain things that happen in the world that some people feel that there's no hope, that things are caving in on them, and there's no hope. And we know what happens when they don't have hope. That's why they have these suicide lines and things of this nature. People are giving up hope. Paul is telling them, I want y'all to understand that we had it rough. So much so, that we despised life. We had already thrown the top in. We wanted to die. But we trusted in ourselves. We didn't trust in God. We trusted in ourselves. So when we trust in ourselves, when the calamities of life come, we despise life. So Paul is telling them, don't think that we didn't have it hard now. But we had it so hard until we despised life. We threw the towel in. We threw it in. So you see, when the calamities of life come, sometimes if you look at it from your perspective, it's a hopeless situation. And when it's a hopeless situation, which means that there is no hope, that when we have no hope, we perish. When we have no hope, we perish. That means that we worry about it ourselves. Now, we've all been to that point where now, I know we've been there, and we've been there. I don't know if we've all been to that point, but we've all realized at some point in the calamity of life that it was a hopeless situation. We lost hope. And Paul was telling them here, telling the Corinthians, look, let me tell you all something. Coming out of Asia, boy, we had it rough. So much so that we even despise life. Why would we want to continue to live going through this? That meant that they were looking at it for themselves. But he said it was something that we were looking at ourselves and not looking at the one who has control over it. So you see, we can lose hope if we start looking at the calamity itself. So these people had already lost hope. Think about it. 3 days in the wilderness with no water, and then they finally find some water and they can't drink it. Hopeless situation. So he had to heal their spirits. And if you look at verse 25, the Lord who heals, verse 25, and he cried unto the Lord, as Moses, and the Lord shewed him a tree, which when he cast into the waters were made sweet. The waters were made sweet. Now I want you to think about this. When he showed him a tree, showed him a piece of wood, get a piece of wood, throw it into the water. Now, think about it. Unconventional solution. We couldn't see that solution. They couldn't see that solution. They, the water, can't drink it. So then they called on the Lord. And what did he do with Moses in there? He said, just tree over here, get that piece of that wood there and throw it into the water. And when you threw it, when you threw it in the waters were made sweet. Now, it goes on to say, there he made for them a statute and an ordinance. And there he proved them. He tested them. He proved. See, when God puts us through these calamities of life, he's proven to us of who he is when we come out on the other side. Here, he proved to them. But that solution came after Moses called on the Lord. Now put here, God used water to teach a lesson about his name. Jehovah Rapha. He's the one that heals. He's healing them of their unbelief. He's healing them of their spiritualness. He's healing them of their emotion. Because again, they've turned their back on him. Now, calamities of life. We turn our back on him. Our faith fails. But we cry unto him. And he proved to him. God ties his manifestations of his name to aligning all of life under him and his commands. And look at what he said to them. He said that, and he proved them. And he said, if thou wilt diligently hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all of his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians. So he's telling them that as long as if you believe in me, if you hold on to me, if you in the test, if you can pass the test, I will heal you. What he did was he proved to them again that he's God, and he's God all by himself. He proved to them that he's God, and God all by himself. Now, when we take a look at Psalm 103, Psalm 103, and then verses 2 and 3, we'll really start at verse 1. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases. Now, forgive them of their iniquities. Now, let's just say, God just showed them something. And 3 days later, they done forgot about it. They go off and doing what it is that they're doing. They forgot about it. What he had done.
Alzheimer's?
Hmm?
Early Alzheimer's?